Psych of Human Relations, Chapter 11, Developing a Professional Presence. So by the end of the chapter, these are the things you should be able to do. Explain the importance of a professional presence, understand the importance of a favorable first impression, be able to define image and the factors that help form an image that you project to others, understand how your online presence can either help or hinder your personal brand, and then understand how life and workplace etiquette contributes to improved interpersonal relations. So when we look at professional presence and personal branding, professional presence is really a combination of all of these different things, and it explains how we carry ourselves. And what it really allows us to do is when we have a professional presence, we're able to walk into a room and project confidence, project our capabilities, our strengths, and it kind of commands, I guess, respect in any sort of situation. Personal brand, that's how we would like other people to think of us. And the way people describe us is in our actions and the way we treat other people and the way that we talk to others. And so over the course of time, that builds our personal brand, and that can be a negative or a positive personal brand. The importance of making a good first impression. What research is going to show us is that first impressions are extremely powerful in how we decide to think about someone or something. So we really need to be aware of making good first impressions, of reaching out to others and putting our best foot forward, so that is the initial image that people get of us. And one of the real problems when they talk about this primacy effect is basically that initial very first impression is the one that sticks with us. And then when we even get later information that contradicts that, it's really difficult for us to get beyond that very first impression. So we need to be aware that we and others are going to not really make decisions based on rational thinking. We're going to make these really split-second subconscious decisions that are going to be based on assumptions and what we think of as being facts. And the real danger here is the shorter the encounter, the less information we have, the better chance that we are going to get misinformation and make the wrong first impression or make the wrong guess about someone based on our first impression. So what are some different things that are going to impact the way that we view different things? Some of it is cultural. And we have to kind of be aware that different groups of people from different cultures are going to view actions differently. So for example, they use this Korean shopkeeper that it is considered to be polite when you put change on the counter, and it's impolite to put it in and touch someone else's hands. So we have to keep in mind that we shouldn't judge other cultures based on our own personal views, because that is going to change. So image is the way that we are, well, the way people feel about us. And so when they kind of describe what kind of person you are, what kind of, whether you're friendly or kind or understanding or grumpy, grouchy, that's the image. And so again, the way we behave, the way that we look, that's going to create this image. And when we can kind of groom a good one, we can use that as a tool that can then help other people when they say, well, what do you know about so-and-so? And they're going to really talk about what your image is. So invest the time and energy to make sure that that personal image, that your personal brand is being developed and enhanced the way that you want it to be for down the road. So here are some major factors that form your image. These are the things that other people are going to be talking about in terms of, hey, what do you know about? And these are some of the things that they're going to be commenting on. So surface language, these are these immediate impressions that are conveyed by your appearance. So in other words, how do you dress? What are your grooming habits? All of those types of things are the first things that people are going to notice. That's why it's called surface language. So when we look at rebranding your image, some basic kind of guidelines is, again, if you're walking into an interview or you're walking in to meet someone to set up an interview, you want to look the part of a job. If you want a promotion, you have to look and project that you are promotable. And so the way that you dress, if you meet these standards, the way that you talk, the way that you act, all of those things should be sending the message that you're the right person for the job, and that you're going to be competent and capable. So when you look at selecting your career apparel, when you go into an interview, really do some background research. Is there a dress code? What is that dress code? What do people from other, go to some of these other workplaces, and what are they looking like? What are they dressing like? And then that can help you kind of decide what's the appropriate clothing and what should you or shouldn't you dress like to be able to get kind of the job that you want. And so here are some factors that influence your choice of clothing for work. And so those are things, again, that you can kind of research. And sometimes you can go to a company webpage and really get a feel for it. Business casual is something that's kind of been picking up over probably the last decade or two, where more and more companies are maybe being a little bit less strict on how people should or shouldn't dress. But even within there can be some guidelines. And those are always some good questions to ask, when you're in an interview is, what are the expectations? Is there this dress down day? Do you have those kinds of things? And what's appropriate, what's not appropriate? So that the company really understands that you're invested in that company and you're trying to understand. And so that you're trying to match what it is that they're looking for in an employee. Facial expression is one of the first things that people are going to see. And so if you kind of always have one of those faces that maybe looks somewhat maybe disinterested or stern or whatever, be aware that that is how you're projecting yourself. And so you want to be aware that people want to see you as being approachable, as being kind of friendly, as being interpersonal. And so, really kind of be thinking about how your face is projecting your own personal brand. And so being good at making eye contact, smiling, those are things that are going to help you make a favorable first impression. Your entrance and poise, the way that you go into a business meeting, the way that you go into a job interview, that's the first thing that people are going to see. And so being nervous or apologetic can maybe kind of impact the way that they interpret, your professional brand. So you want to try and make sure that you project a level of self-confidence. Walk in there like you're meant to be there and have good posture. Be energetic, but don't be overwhelming. I know that these are all kind of overwhelming probably to hear all this stuff, but be thinking about, as you walk into a room, what are the first things that people are going to see and think about you? Voice quality, speech habits. So this is something that would benefit you to record yourself and listen to yourself. I notice that an awful lot when I'm listening to these video recordings, that I have these habits in my speech, and I try and be more aware of them so that I can eliminate them. But then too, the rate of speech, how quickly, the volume, am I pronouncing words clearly or not? And so these are all things that you can kind of begin to develop and hone simply by recording and listening back and hearing what other people hear. Handshakes are one of the first forms of physical contact when people first meet. So working on your handshake, making sure it's one that's firm but not vice-like, that you're making contact and smiling, that's going to be one of the first impressions that people get. Online presence and the impact that it has on your personal brand. This is something that you're already building, whether you like it or not, or whether you know it or not. So these are all of the things that you are doing online, and how can you use those to your advantage? So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, these are all ways that we are sending out an image of ourselves online. This is one of the best ways actually to kind of establish your own personal brand. But writing blogs is a good way, because what that is doing is that's telling employers what you're thinking, and they're trying to get kind of a background information on what you are and who you are. Make sure you're using this with great care. My suggestion to you is, after high school, I would go and purge almost all of your social media, because we're hearing all the time about people who put something on at 16, and that comes back to bite them in the butt. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. I mean, in some cases, maybe it is establishing a pattern of behavior, but what someone thinks and someone says and what someone thinks is funny at 16 probably isn't something they're going to think is funny or appropriate at 36. And so it's a good idea to go back and kind of get rid of all of those things. And as you get older, especially when you're in college and you're starting to build this online social media presence, be careful what you post. Pick things that are going to project the kind of personal and professional branding that you want. And so, these are things that you can really control and begin to build up. And the other thing to keep in mind is, when people look through your social media, and more companies are doing this, is that something that you would want someone who's going to interview you or hire you to see? So make sure you're kind of consistently going through that. The other thing too is, you can hire people that can help build your social reputation. So there's different companies who are going to do this. The other thing that you can really do simply is use Google Alerts to track mentions of your name, so that way you can catch things before it maybe comes back and gets you a little bit later on. So etiquette, these are a set of traditions based on kindness, efficiency, and logic. It's just ways that we should really behave. So there's some suggestions for dining etiquette and meeting etiquette, but for the most part, don't eat like a slob. If you're in a business meeting, maybe think about what you're eating. Maybe you don't want to go for that sky-high burger that's piled on, so that way when you take a bite of it, it all goes all over your pants. Or pasta where you're slooping noodles. You may want to be thinking about that. For meeting etiquette, being on time, staying positive, make sure that the meeting is not going off track. Those are all things people are going to appreciate. For smartphone etiquette, these are things that you kind of need to be aware of. Don't text during meetings or conversations. I see more and more people who are not thinking about what they're projecting when they're using their smartphone. For conversational etiquette, don't be informal too soon. Avoid dropping F-bombs. Those are all things that can kind of help you build this brand. When you get to networking, how are you going to reach out and meet other people and be able to create this business web of contacts? What are some of the things that you need to be thinking about as you're networking with other people? Avoid talking negatively about your current job, life, or boss, because those are all things that, well, we really don't really want to hire that person, because, what happens if they complain about me? Doing simple things like sending a handwritten thank you note to anyone who's been helpful to you, that's going to help build your network, build your reputation, and build your brand outward. The other thing when we're looking at this is, more and more of the recruiting world is probably going to be outsourced to online. So getting on some of these job board websites as you're getting through college or even early in college, and build those up and keep those updated. And ultimately keep in mind that incivility, being unkind to other people, is going to be a career killer. You could be one of the most talented people in the world, but if you treat people like garbage, that's what's going to stick out, and it's not going to help you get promoted. Civility is just simply being kind and nice to others and being considerate to others. Those are the things that people are going to remember, and those little things are what get you noticed. A lot of times we think it's the big things. It's not. It's the everyday stuff. Do you smile? Do you say hi? Are you kind to receptionists? Are you polite to customers? Those are the things that are going to help build your personal brand, your professional presence, and are going to help you get promoted. For a job interview, It's a good idea, again, to acquire background information on the employer. Do your research. Show that you're interested. And when you're in that interview, make the most of your opportunities to let them know you did your homework on them. Dress conservatively. Make sure you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're early, that's what you want to be able to do. You want to show that you are there, you're dependable, and that you are invested in this and you really want the job. And whatever you do, don't look at your phone during the interview. Shut it off, leave it in the car.